there is an inherent bias towards the status quo of any large organization.
Yeah.
Nobody ever wants to innovate in a way that sort of exhibits risk when you are already arguably the monopoly or the oligopoly in your industry. And we see that across many industries.
Take FIFA, for example.
Yep.
You play Ultimate Team, you get a load of FIFA points, you build your team, and then the next season, FIFA or EA wouldn't necessarily want you to just transfer all of that value that you accrued in the previous game to the new game. And they have an incentive to say, actually, there's new players now, stats have changed, do what you did again this season.
Yep.
Like, do you think it's going to be hard to get developers to break that cycle?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's take video games as a typical example. Video games generally undergo a platform change every decade or so, right? From consoles to PCs to mobile, whatever it is, handheld devices. And every time there's a platform change, essentially the kings, quote unquote, of the new platform are new emergent companies who are like native experts in that platform, not the companies who were the dominant in the previous platform, because they see that as too risky.
Yeah.
So if you look at mobile, for example, all of the big console titles only started to come to mobile more than a decade after, frankly, the whole world was playing mobile games, right? And the companies we associate with mobile, like King, who make Candy Crush, or Supercell, who make Clash of Clans, or even Epic with Fortnite, you know, Minecraft, none of these things are things that we would associate with console, right? And they're the masters of the new platform. And I think we'll see the same thing when it comes to Web3 gaming, you know, and we've seen a lot of those companies like Sky Mavis, who makes Axie Infinity, for example. So I think there's that element to it, but I don't think that should hold back companies from pursuing that, because there's a huge opportunity there, but it's often difficult to articulate. So one of the ways that I like to explain it, and I think in this case you can think about loyalty. So typically, one of the big analogies that people use for loyalty are airline reward points, because that's one of those loyalty schemes everybody is familiar with.
Yes.
And you would think that airline loyalty reward schemes are something that you would want to keep as a walled garden, because you're like, well, I want to issue my points, but you can't use my points anywhere else, because this is how I'm going to hook you onto my service, and you're going to be stuck using my airline forever because you've accumulated all those points, and that's how I ensure your loyalty. But if you think about it, that also constrains the ability to grow the pie, because it's a little bit like free trade, right? If you think about how countries work, generally the pie of global trade increases the lower the tariffs and barriers there are to people interoperating amongst each other. And I would argue the same thing would be true with airline reward points, because if we had more fungibility, to use a Web3 term, amongst airline reward points, I actually think people would travel more, right? Because now I can use my points to go anywhere. Well, I'm going to take a flight, and guess what happens when you take a flight? You're going to earn more points, and then you're going to use more points, et cetera, et cetera. And then you also open up the potential for financial innovation, right? And this is what we've seen in Web3. So all of a sudden, once you have a free market for points, instead of saying points, I'll say utility tokens per airline, right? Then what happens? Somebody steps in and says, I think that Emirates is undervalued versus Singapore Airlines. So I'm going to make a market in that and take a position, and I'm going to buy a bunch of Emirates points, right? Is that good or bad for the airline, right? So all that innovation can start to take place once you have slightly more open and interoperable systems.
And it allows the airline, in your example, to like own more of the secondary market. Like you've seen it. Rolex have done it recently. Like they never sold pre-owned watches, and now they do sell pre-owned watches because they saw what was happening on the grey market, particularly in the last 4 years. And I've even bought points before, and it's like someone that you've met on Telegram, and they're like, I send you money, you send me points. I'm like, this feels weird already. Like,
that sounds really safe.
It just sounds bizarre. And to be fair, like I got the points, so like it's a good service. But why would an airline not allow that to happen? You know, like particularly if you're like,
totally.
a large family and you want to like, okay, I'm going to fly in whatever class it is. I'd like my kids to fly with me. I'll just buy the points to get them the seat as opposed to just stumping up for a massive seat for a small kid.
Exactly. Concert tickets, the other one, right? Everybody says, well, why are there all these scalpers? Why don't they just make a secondary market so that I can get rid of the tickets I can no longer use?
4 or 5 years ago, like, I don't know if anyone's done this since, but I was like, it would be great if like an upcoming artist tokenized themselves and like early investors could help them pay for their first bit of studio time, and that token entitled you to free tickets or like a future sale of the royalty, like just allow that to happen so you're going to break away from what can go quite wrong when a record label gets involved. And I just think it's one of those things that it's starting to happen slowly, and then it's like all of a sudden everyone will be like, why didn't we do this 10 years ago?